Well, good morning and welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Heavyweights Podcast. I am Ashton Hines. I have been in the business a little under 5 years, sold several houses to nice folks out there in the DFW area. I've flipped 4 houses. I had a rental house that I recently sold. So I'm in the game, but not nearly as much in the game as my friend and co-host, the other half of the Real Estate Heavyweights, owner of multiple rental houses, now 2 commercial properties, has flipped over 200 houses and been in the game 20 years. Tavis Westbrook. What's up, Tavis?
Hey. Good morning.
Buenos dias.
Have not closed the second commercial property yet. We are in contract. Set to close the end of June. So, just to be clear.
Soon to be owner of 2 commercial properties. One in Garland, one in Terrell. But yeah, that's going to be a neat property. So I don't want to jinx it, but I'm hoping that works out for you. We got to go walk it. You did not get to experience the farmer's market that's right next door that you could walk next to.
No, I didn't. You did.
Did you eat the tomatoes?
I was very thankful.
Or cucumbers. Yeah, cucumbers. And then I bought a watermelon, I believe. Really good watermelon.
She loves cucumbers as a snack at work. So
that's a no for me.
She's been diligent on cutting those up and taking them to work.
Yeah.
So, the cool thing with commercial, and this is just something to be aware of, is, they're tough to find. These type of opportunities are obviously tough to find, but this one was kind of a quick lead my way, and we dissected it, and the more I peeled the onion back, it was attractive, but we needed to kind of get the numbers right. So we first initially threw out an offer. They basically rejected it, said they were going with another offer, and then about a week later they came back. So patience is key sometimes with opportunities like this. You just kind of have to stick to your guns on what works. That's the benefit of investment real estate, is not really much emotion attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a numbers game. If the numbers make sense, then you pull the trigger and move forward.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about some negotiating later in this episode. So stay tuned. We're going to dive deep into some negotiating tactics and hear how Tavis basically negotiates deals, and I'll give my 2 cents and kind of my evolution in negotiating. But
the big point I wanted to make with commercial, and the reason I'm strongly looking at opportunities in the commercial realm, is one of the things that's happened on the residential side, and you've heard us talk about this before, but taxes and insurance are killing the margins on traditional residential real estate.
Yeah, talk about the bill you got the other day while we were on the phone, and the difference. That is it Woodway, or which one was it?
Yeah, some crazy number. I mean, because technically these properties are furnished rentals, but we do what's called midterm, meaning that we do 30 plus days or 30 plus nights is what we require. But what happened is my agent ran it as a short term, less than 30 days. And the premium with the same carrier jumped from last year to this year. I think last year it was in the low $3,000 range for an annual policy, and it was jumping up to over $8,000
almost
for
triple.
The annual policy for the same house. I mean, value hasn't changed much. Same kind of thing. These insurance companies are just pushing people out, right? The more that they can push people out, get people off their books, and not have to worry about covering that as a liability. Also, the other thing that you're running into is if you're changing carriers or buying a new property, they want you to get a roof professional out to jump up on the roof and talk about how long the roof has and life expectancy, which is always one of those crazy, you could put anything down kind of thing. I mean,
right,
it's
crystal
like,
ball. Yeah.
Yeah. Who's really going to tell you how long this roof is going to last in our type of weather and our, in the history that we have here. But
let me ask you
anything
this.
like,
let me ask you just real quick. How many houses have you walked that you know for a fact that there was damage because of a bad roof? I mean, is that super common? I don't even know. I'm not saying that there's not ever like old roofs, but how many times is the roof being an extra 5 or 10 years old like ruin the value of a house? To me, it seems
Well,
fairly rare.
what it comes down to is the insurance, right? So in houses that we do walk, let's say that the roof looks old, but it's not leaking. You don't see any leaks anywhere. But I mean, you can tell that the shingles have wear and tear. You
Hmm.
can tell that the vent stacks are rusted, haven't been painted in years. Um, you
The
can
three
tell that the
tab, you told me to
flashing.
start looking for the 3 tab vents. That's an old.
Yeah. The 3 tab shingles aren't being manufactured anymore, as far as I know. That haven't been put on roofs in more than 5 years. Um, so signs of that are more of an indication that if you buy this house and you don't change the roof out, you may catch heat when you try to sell it.
Mm.
So it's not necessarily that it's killing the purchase opportunity for you to buy the house for you as the investor, but for you to resell it, you have these investors. For instance, yesterday I got a call on Alameda, and they said, "Do you have any documentation from the roof that was put on in 2018?" I said, "Unfortunately, I don't. I didn't get that information from the previous owner." And he's like, "Well, the insurance company's asking for, documentation if you have it." Um, Essentially, what they want is they want a roofer to go walk it and basically stamp it and say the roof's in good shape and it has 10 years left on his life or
Hmm.
8 years left on his life or whatever the case may be. I know that for a while, the past 3 years, we've been fighting policies that say if the roof is older than 15 years old, then it will not cover it. Mind you, what's crazy about that is that the standard shingle that's being manufactured these days has a manufacturer warranty that comes out of 30 years.
Right, a 30-year
So,
shingle. That's what
yeah.
market that.
But if the roof's older than 15 years, the my insurance policies are basically
Not
deleting it
covering
from the
it.
policy, or basically saying it's not covered. It's excluded. So what we're running into is because of these roofer companies out there and all these people that are basically chasing these hailstorms. I mean, even though we do have some valid hailstorms that happen that cause a lot of damage, but we also have a lot of hailstorms that don't really cause
Hmm.
damage that's going to cause a leak, but it does, strike the roof and the
Yeah.
shingle. And so everybody and their brothers putting claims in all the time. That's why you're seeing now that minimum deductible is starting out at 2% right now for the most part,
Mm.
and some are going up higher than that. But circling back, the benefit of commercial is that you can do what's called double net or triple net, right? And so what this means is that the tenant is then responsible for these expenses. So for instance, the Garland property is a triple net property. It wasn't when I bought it, but it allowed me to buy this property, renovate it, and then re-up the rents, and then I'll start allowing it to be triple net. And so what happens at triple net is it's a 5 unit building. And so what you do is you add up the total expenses annually based on taxes, insurance, and then what's called CAM. Now, forget exactly what CAM stands for, but basically, including in the CAM would be, for instance, I have cameras around the building and I pay for internet for that. And so basically, that total expense that is monitoring those cameras around for security of the property, the mowing maintenance, the water, which I pay city water for the entire building. And I also pay what's called house electric. So that controls the exterior lights, the parking lot lights, etc. So all those bills are part of owning that building.
So Cam, I just
Um,
looked it up. Common area maintenance.
there you go. So what happens is then you do a pro rata portion back to the tenant. So in
Hmm.
mine, they're evenly spaced 20% units. And so essentially 20% of uh, that annual bill gets divided by 12, and then that number gets added to the base rent. And so everybody pays that every month. That's included in the rent. And then we evaluate it at the end of each year. And then if there's an adjustment that needs to be made, whether it goes up or down, meaning taxes go up or insurance goes up or insurance goes down or CAM goes up or adjust, then you're going to make that adjustment at the end of the year. And then the new year will say, okay, now this triple net number you're paying every month is going to increase by $5, $10
Right.
or something. So it's actually not too bad because when the adjustments are made, it's a portion, that gets spread out evenly between the units, and um, it kind of gets dispersed. So
Yeah. And for some reason,
10,
residential isn't really built on that. You don't have a rental house and say, hey, I'm going to give you the base rent of 1,200 a month, but then we're going to divide up the insurance cost and my taxes and then
you
the
know,
yard maintenance. You just don't, it's just not structured that
it,
way.
it isn't structured that way. And I thought about it. I was like, what's keeping us from doing that?
Yeah, I guess you could do
I
whatever you
really
want.
thought about that. I was like,
Well,
what?
here's what would happen is because Zillow and all these other, they would advertise. This is just like, Frontier Airlines advertising a low flight. They're like, fly to Denver for $39, but then we need $40 for a bag, and we need if you want
Right.
water and all this. Like, so by the time you're done, the net price is way more. But you could advertise, base rent $1,100, and you get a ton of
Yep.
people that want to be there, but then they couldn't afford the the overall rent. So yeah, it's weird how it doesn't work like that. So, but yeah, I know we were talking the other day when you had that phone call, and that's got to be shocking to say, hey, here's a property that net maybe $5,000 off the top that next year would just be different. And these, luckily it's midterm, and so you do have more margins. But I mean, if that was a long-term rental, it would completely wipe out your profit. You would probably go negative on that.
That property I picked up last year in the Colony, I bought it with a flip. My margins are really good. I got great equity in this property. Renovated it, got it leased out. I mean, I literally put a sign in the yard, got a couple good prospects, ended up getting a great tenant in there. Top of the market for what the rent was doing. I mean, this was a 1,500 square foot house and it rents for $2,400 a month. I mean, clean property. We're putting in new ACs and, all the stuff, right? And so not only maintenance type, but it also cosmetically appeasing. And that thing breaks even. There's no cash flow. I mean, it's a 1-to-1 ratio.
You're reserving your spot in the world to pay down equity and then gain equity in the market as long as it's
it makes
going well.
money from principal reduction and equity gain. I mean, cash flow wise, it makes nothing. And I paid low 200 something thousands in that, and then another 40 something $50,000 of reno. So I mean, for almost $300,000 investment, I mean, it's breaking even. And that's just what we're up against now.
I was having the conversation just yesterday because our neighbors to the left last year sold. I bet they sold that house for $650, and immediately the people who bought it turned around and leased it out. Like the intention of buying that house was as a rental.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it rented because it was never on the market. I don't know exactly what it rented for, but I mean, even if it rented for $4,500 a month or something, I mean, to buy a house for $650, to put down what you need to get the mortgage low enough to make that work. I mean, they're not making any money. Or there's a lot of folks that do that higher end. We rented a house when we first moved here up in North Plano, and it was a nice house. It wasn't crazy, but it was a 2-story house in the middle of Plano. And just from a pure numbers, like, hey, I'm looking for something that's close to 1%. There's no way it's even close to that. So there's all sorts of investors out there, and the numbers are weird. But when one of your fixed costs like that, insurance goes up, or your tax base, which here, you're not supposed to go up more than 10% year over year. Mm-hmm. Your tax base goes up. The double whammy of that is just you can't go to your tenant and say, hey, by the way, I just got hit with this bill and this bill. I'm going to go. No, I need you to go ahead and kick in an extra $350 a month this next year. So
it's wild. The other benefit to commercial is the length of time, and you can also build in it's common practice to build in an increase annually. So it's not a lot, but it's a
Yeah.
3%, increase every year.
Well, and it's also valued on cap rates, which we've talked a little bit
Exactly.
about. And so, yeah, there's a ton of benefits to commercial. And, I would love to at some point have a little commercial building. And I know you're getting into that world. So, we are going to try something a little different today. We're not going to do our traditional market update. We're going to continue to do that. We may do it every other week. We may do it once a month. We're going to kind of feel out a different format. So if you're out there and you care one way or the other, please let us know. We would love to continue to provide that. If you think it's something super valuable to you, I thought we could actually do it as like a little 5-minute snippet. I could get on and just go through the numbers once a week and throw out a little 5-minute podcast episode that's just market update for those people that just want to. I remember my grandpa. So I learned to cook. Side note into Ashton's life, I learned to cook largely from my grandpa. He would wake me up early. They had a pretty small house, and so I would sleep on the pull-out couch in the living room, and right around the corner was that they had a double wide, and or it was a manufactured home, but it kind of felt like a double wide or whatever. So right around the corner was the kitchen, and he would come wake me up, and not my two siblings, and I would go in there, and I would make biscuits and sausage or whatever. But very often on the radio, the only radio I ever remember my grandpa listening to was the Amarillo AM station that was just talking about farm prices. And it was just real straightforward. It was just like corn's at 372, blah, 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 cotton's at 932 a bushel. They would just run down all these numbers and he would just sit there and listen to it. And over and over and over, I don't know if it was every morning or if it was once a week and I just happened to be catching that episode. But so in my mind, we could do something similar to where I could just kind of, for a few minutes, just run down the numbers of here's how many houses are for sale. Here's what the average interest rate is right now. Here's the, price decreases and all that. So as an homage to Grandpa Messer, I may do a farm ag style price per bushel statistics for homes. So I don't know. So
I think you should. I mean, some of our listeners have said, it's been good, but maybe do it, once a month. So
yeah,
we're listening to you guys' feedback with that, and we have ever changed our podcast. Over 100 episodes now. We've definitely had different things that we've changed up, and we're going to get some more interviews for you guys and things like that as well.
yeah, and I
soon,
actually touched base with our YouTube fellow. He's over in the Philippines, and to his credit, he reached back out and really apologized. Like, man, I fell off. I haven't been on the app working much. I'm back. I could tell he changed his profile picture. So I don't know if he went through some life stuff and but I hadn't really pushed it and I hadn't wanted to find anybody else really, because he did a good job and it's pretty cheap. And so he's back in the saddle. And so I think we're going to be able to throw up some more YouTube videos here soon.
Awesome.
And then side note, I don't know if you know this. This is a slight life update. So I'm on hour 62 of a 72-hour fast.
I was going to ask you how that's going.
Yes, it's going fine. Mine's working great. I feel very sharp. I mean, after Memorial Day, I was just feeling so sluggish. And I was like, man, I just got to do something different. And, I know we're the real estate heavyweights, but we don't have to have that moniker forever. Like, we could be business heavyweights, it's like, that's okay. And so, yeah, I had crept up to the heaviest I'd ever been. And, for those of you that are don't know me or haven't met me, I'm 6'3", and I had crept up to 315. And so, one of the reasons we're the heavyweights and the reason I like the boxing theme is I boxed a few years ago. I boxed at 268. My one match, I boxed at 268. And so that's literally my fighting weight. And so I at least want to get back towards that area of the 250, 260 range. And then we'll just kind of see where we are. But so I jump started it with this. I was going to do a 24-hour fast. I'll just skip a few meals. Well, then I was like, oh, reading the benefits, 72 hours is like hugely beneficial to your body. There's a lot of body type cellular cleanup that goes on with that length of fast. It actually is very good for cancer prevention, that sort of thing. So the problem is I had already volunteered today on the last day of a 72-hour fast to grill hot dogs and hamburgers for the Hebron band for a picnic. So yesterday, hungry, walked around Costco buying hot dogs, hamburgers, buns, and all this stuff for I bought 300 hamburger patties, 40 veggie patties, and I think 120 hot dogs. And so today, me and two other guys are in charge of grilling. So at the very last portion of my thing, I will sit there and just have to deal with hamburgers for 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever. But if I can make it till 5:00 tonight, I will have made the 72-hour mark, and I will eat, because we are playing golf tomorrow for the Hebron band fundraiser, and I have to have all the energy.
You don't want to start over and deal with that tomorrow. Be on a fast tomorrow.
Oh, no. I will eat tonight. I will have energy going into the golf tournament.
I'm just saying, you're so close now. It would be a shame to mess it up and then have to start over.
No, I'm going to make it.
You're on the back end of it.
What's crazy is, so there was a period of time yesterday that I did feel hungry, but in general, I felt really good. Yeah. So I have about 10 hours left. We will see how it goes. I will update you. I do feel good. They talk about how clear your brain is, and I can attest to that. I feel really good. Don't feel sluggish at all from that perspective. Have more energy during the day mentally. So I think I'm going to incorporate something like this on a regular basis. I was talking to Dr. Aaron Roberts about my idea, and so I'm thinking about once a month doing a 24-hour fast, and maybe once a quarter doing one of these 72s, just to get right, and then maybe minimize what I'm doing during the day. So
was he the one?
So basically, I'm just going to stop eating.
Or did he recommend the fast?
I told him I was trying, and he said, "Oh, that sounds cool. That sounds great." Awesome. I mean, fasting is. I mean, there's a lot of studies that say it's very good for you. I mean, you have to do it in the right way, but there's just a lot of benefits to giving your body long periods of rest to just kind of calm down and do other things it's meant to do. That when it's constantly working to digest, it's constantly working on bringing down insulin, sugar levels in your blood. It can't do other functions. And that's where I was. It was working overtime. So anyway, you don't get to a little bit on the heavy side by doing everything right. So just trying to do a few things to help out.
Good for your brain too. So
good for my brain. Okay. So why don't we talk about a little bit of news? And in the news are dear Dallas Mavericks, the general manager that they brought in, who used to work for the Golden State Warriors. He had another interview, and he is talking about their commitment to starting a new arena in Dallas. And he says in his latest interview that it will definitely not be a hockey arena. It'll be a basketball only arena. He says it will be in Dallas. So this idea of them going to Irving, I don't know if that's completely off the table or what, but his name is Rick Welts. He built a new arena while he was with Golden State, and that's kind of why they brought him in, because he's just familiar with this whole process. But it'll be ready for the open the new arena before the 2020 or 2031 season. So, I mean, between acquiring land and getting started, I mean, they don't have that long. I mean, it'll take a while to.
And the construction part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's only.
It says we're going to build a brand new arena and entertainment district in Dallas to really take us into the next 30 years of our history. It's owned by the Las Vegas Sands Corporation, the Adelson family. They build amazing, beautiful projects in Asia, and we're going to do that in Dallas. I think that might be some editorial freedom, because they said ... in the middle of that quote. I don't know. They build beautiful projects in Asia, ... and we're going to do that in Dallas. I don't know what they left.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see what they come up with. We're bummed out, right? Because they're building a new campus for Tabitha's headquarters that
Right there.
literally is
Yeah.
across the street from American
Yeah.
Airlines Center right now. So we were looking forward to when that's finished and having the parking garage and, just the convenience. And, that'll probably get finished and we might have a year left at the AAC before we move over to
So
wherever they
from
put us.
from a season ticket holder standpoint, because they're talking about, oh, we're going to make this a dedicated thing for
Basketball.
our
Yeah.
basketball. So from a user experience, you spend a ton of time at that arena. What would you want different? Like, how do you look at the game and think, man, I wish they would do this? I mean, he says that you could be closer. They could have more seats closer to the court if they didn't have to accommodate for hockey.
So if you ever notice there between, obviously basketball and hockey season are at the same time, they go on the same time. So when you're in the arena for a basketball game, you can look up and see where the net is that drops, right? And essentially what they're talking about is there's so many less seats that are available for hockey than they are for basketball because the court's smaller. And so what happens is they end up having to build out the bleachers, build out a lot of floor seating, and things like that in order to accommodate, the basketball arena. So I think what they're getting at is just if you have premium, I mean, because to be honest, like the courtside seats don't look very comfortable. I mean, it's like a fold-up chair.
Yeah.
So
And
I think
even in the every arena, you see that, like Lakers anywhere, New York, they're just crammed in there. So
right.
I don't.
So I think they're probably just talking about more of a luxury experience. The closer you are to the arena, to be better seats, that are more permanently fixed.
Yeah.
It gives you more flexibility that way. If the arena is dedicated and designed around a basketball court, and that you don't have to move that stuff back and forth. I mean, that was what I read out of the article was that it didn't have, there's so much more functionality that has to be accommodated for to make it a hockey rink
Yeah.
versus just a basketball rink.
Yeah. Because the hockey rink is wider.
Court.
When you're there watching basketball, you can see where the nets come down for the hockey rink.
Yeah, it's quite a bit. I mean,
it is a lot bigger.
30, 40 feet at least, as far as like a perimeter around the court.
But from a user experience of like restaurants and bars and all that, you like it, right? I mean, it's pretty cool.
For me, and based on our seats, I don't think that would have much effect or much change. One thing I did notice, so behind us currently now, for Mavericks games, we have commentators or people that set up their laptop and sit behind us.
Yeah.
During the Stars game, those are turned into seats. So they have another like 2 or 3 rows of seats that they put into that section. And probably it's to offset, the amount of seats that, they have to give up, right, for the hockey rink. So,
yeah. Well, and they didn't mention.
Yeah, I don't think it'll
concerts.
matter too much to us. I mean, what's that?
Concerts. They did.
Well, and if you think about
they do a lot of concerts
too,
at AAC.
Well, and I'm sure they'll do concerts at the new place because it essentially when they have a concert, you have a little main stage, and then they have floor seating, right, or floor access, to the concert. And so I've never been to a concert at AAC, but I'm sure it appears to be extremely different just because of, you have a stage set up somewhere and then you have all the floor access. So
yeah, I've been to a couple. We saw Ed Sheeran there, and basically what they do is they kind of cut a quarter of the arena. So like if you imagine where y'all sit at the far end of the arena, almost maybe where like the free throw line on the far side would be, they drop a big curtain there and put a stage. And so you have I would say at least 3/4 of the arena they can fill with seats there. And then you can have seats down on the floor. So it was cool. I mean, from an acoustic standpoint and sound, I mean, I'm sure it's not amazing. It's way better than Jerry World out there where the Cowboys play. It's just a cavern. So yeah, I mean, I would imagine that they want to set it up for entertainment and all that. So I don't know. they have ideas. I won't pull them up, but there's a couple other articles about there's it, there's a couple of developments going downtown, and they're looking for, this is on the edge of Oaklawn and Highland Park, and it was so funny because they're so early on in the development phase. Like, they just have literal ideas. They don't even have sketches yet, but they're kind of putting it out there. And I don't know if it's a PR move to get sort of city approval, or hey, this is kind of what. But these other developers are doing the same thing as this Rick Welch guy. Is like, they're kind of putting it out there, like, hey, this is what we're going to do. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be luxurious. It's going to be all these things. But they don't even have zoning. They don't even have the right land purchased yet. So I guess this is kind of something that they have to do on those big development projects, is to really kind of lay the groundwork with city officials and other residents that are going to, protest out front, and really kind of paint the picture early on, just to kind of give them an idea of, like, okay, this is what we're doing. I don't know. But 2 or 3 of the articles kind of had to do with this exact same thing, of some really wealthy developer basically saying, oh, this is our idea. We have to rewrite all the rules to make this happen, but it's going to be awesome. So we're not doing a market update, but I will touch on just kind of the United States market, because it was in the news a lot this week. Redfin news. If you get onto the main screen of Redfin news here, it does not look rosy, because the first article is the U.S. housing market has nearly 500,000 more sellers than buyers, the most on record. That will likely cause home prices to fall. Next article. Investor purchases of condos fall to lowest level in 10 years. And then next article. Luxury pending home sales fell 10% to the lowest level over a decade. And another article. High housing costs are keeping home buyers at bay. But price relief is in sight, which means price drop. So Redfin had all these articles. There was another, let's see. Oh, I was looking at, I clicked into one of the articles about how there's way more sellers than buyers. In the Dallas market, there are a ton of, we have close to a 10-year high of inventory on our MLS. And so I looked back at the history. A lot of people will say that basically since 1929, which was the Great Depression, stock market crash, the only big dip was during the 2008 crash. And but we do go on around 16 to 18-year cycles with real estate. We're 16 years after that. So there's just a few things that would indicate that we're due for some sort of pullback, but an actual year-over-year loss is pretty rare. And it is shaping up to where, at least some parts of the country, it's looking like we're going to have a year-over-year loss. And Dallas may be one of those. I mean, it might be a negative 0.8% or something like that. It's not going to be, it's not necessarily shaping up to be a 20% precipitous fall, but it would still be a year-over-year decline, which would make huge news. And because it's basically twice in the last 100 years it's happened. And so, I sat in a class I talked about recently, and they were very optimistic about the market and all those. But between talking to Matt Aycock, go back and listen to that episode if you haven't yet, a couple of episodes ago, an attorney who deals with a lot of foreclosures, a lot of hard money lenders here in town, and then a lot of these articles that are just showing that there's probably going to be a pullback. That is something to look at. And, for you, and this might transition us into the next, our next topic here. It means that you have to buy things deeper. And it means that for me, I have a retail house for sale right now. Our family house is for sale, and, we're not going to mess around with pricing and with offers and that sort of thing, because it just looks like, hey, if you get a solid offer, let's go, let's try to make this one work, because you're not going to get 4 or 5 coming in the door in week 5 of it being on the market,
Well, I think I told you about that property I went and looked at last week that was in the Verlaine neighborhood, and I bid on it. And, I felt like I could, I was already extremely lower. I was compensating for the fact that it backs up to commercial. So I was plugging in about a $25,000 decrease underneath what I sold the Verlaine house for.
Mm.
The other factor was that the Verlaine house, even though it was smaller, was a 3-bedroom. This one was a 2-bedroom, and there was no way to really make it a 3 or even make a study out of, the dining room, for instance, the way it laid out. House is in pretty rough shape. Needs a lot of updates. Needs a lot of deferred maintenance. Had a semi half garage conversion that they made the you know primary bedroom bigger into the garage for some weird reason. It doesn't make a lot of sense. A lot of things need to be pulled back. So we wrote the offer at a decent number. Wasn't a home run, but it's a base hit based on the way I wrote it. Paying the agent a referral, and I wrote it contingent upon a satisfactory plumbing and engineer report because the owner had foundation work done before. Well, a couple days go by and he comes back. They counter me about, I don't know. I need to go back and look, but they basically counter me probably $8,000 more than where I was. The issue was not only did he counter me with that, he wants me to do no option. So basically,
Mm.
he's saying, "Hey, we had a test done before and it was fine." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Okay, well, that's not good enough for me." So
Yeah.
it goes back to, if I took this deal just because I want the deal, I'm going to be squirming at the end, because if I
Mm.
do get hit with this $25,000 deduction based on location, and it's a 2-bedroom versus a 3-bedroom, even though I can make this thing nice, there's no doubt about it. But there's some hidden stuff in this place, and it's going to be one of those deals that ends up potentially being a bad deal.
Mm.
Um, and I could still make money, but is it worth the time and effort? So
Yeah.
it's something you really have to be aware of, and just the amount of experience that we have in this market. You have to hold to your guns. A couple of years ago, I could give in a little bit to do the deal because the back end market was strong enough. Now it's shifted, and because it's shifted, you have to really hold to your guns. It also gives me a better hand of actually getting the opportunity, because other people are flaking out, or the people I'm competing with are wholesalers. And what happens is that wholesaler is putting that deal out to another investor that's probably experienced like me, and is going to see things very similar to the way I do. And maybe not. I mean, we're seeing these big wholesale groups selling property at 30,000 over what they're asking, and we're like $30,000 under what they're asking. So I feel sorry for those guys, because those are the guys that are going to be like one and done, or they're going to do the deal and they're going to get egg on their face, and it's going to be bad.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't have the market to correct it. So even though I have a huge goal this year, and I want to keep buying, and I want to meet this goal, you have to play red light, green light, and you have to be aware when there's an opportunity that you have to kind of just dig your heels in and go, nope, this is where I'm at. This is the max I'm willing to pay. I gave you my best foot forward, and this is where I'm at.
Yeah.
So,
So let's talk about this a little bit. So what I wanted to do was, we've talked, you work with a lot of realtors, and I wanted to take people kind of behind the curtain a little bit as the exact, how that exact process works, how you start your negotiating process. I'm negotiating on my house. We have a potential offer coming in. The first conversation I had with the agent, I could just tell she was posturing, putting her people into a certain position to be able to make an offer that probably is going to be a little bit low, and all this, maybe first time home buyers, but they love the house, and trying to kind of get me to buy into the idea, though, man, I just really wanted to make it work for these people. And um, so let's role play a little bit, and I want to hear kind of the language that you use to sort of move the deal along, but to go ahead and start laying the groundwork for pricing and that sort of thing. And then let's just walk through the idea of, okay, you're going to get a call from an agent. You're going to go out and look at it. What are these conversations at the house? And then, closing the deal. We don't have to make this last 30 minutes, but
yeah.
I think it'd be interesting for people who might be thinking about calling you to send you a deal, or have never really dealt with agents this way. And plus, just from a negotiating, you've sold and bought, you've probably had 500 transaction sides over the course of your career. And so there's been a lot of negotiating on the sales side and the buy side. So let's pretend like I'm an agent. I'm calling you up. I've gotten your name from somebody, and it's like, hey, good morning, Tavis. I got your name from Nancy at our office, and I got a situation. I've got a friend at church, and she just inherited a house from her mom, passed away. It's been a while, and just went through probate. I think they're done. But Nancy told me that you buy investment stuff, and so I don't know. I don't even know what we're looking for, but I want maybe an offer. Is that something you're even interested in, or tell me what we need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can just shoot me over the address, and if you can find out a few things for me, that would be helpful. One is, how old is the roof? How old is the AC? Is there any known issues regarding the plumbing? Anything that you know about that is, in need right now based on the house. Those things would be helpful to get things going. But if you send me the address, all I'm going to do is
Okay.
look that up and then see if possibly we set a time to go out and look at the property
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Yeah, I know that the kids have never lived there, so I mean, I'll find out as much as that I can. But yeah, I mean, I don't. I think they grew up there at one point, but it's been a long time since they've actually lived there. And I do know, just talking to them, their mom's a little bit of a hoarder, and they're just kind of nervous about having to get rid of a bunch of stuff and all that. But yeah, I
Not a
mean,
problem.
I'll find out as much of that as possible.
Okay.
So, is it
Well, let me
something that you
ask you
might be able
this.
to take a look at, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you guys have a number in mind? Have you discussed any kind of conversation so far about what kind of net that, the family's looking for? I mean, have they done any
Well,
research on that so far?
not a ton. Of course, they've been on Zillow, and they grew up in the neighborhood, and so they've kind of seen what things have been selling for over there, and that neighborhood's kind of turning over. And I'm sure you've seen some of them. They're kind of scraping some of those lots and doing some pretty cool renovations. And so I think it's probably needs to be renovated, but we haven't talked about a huge number. I know there's two brothers and a sister, and so they're kind of just needing to be done with it. But this is part of their inheritance, and so I don't know. I mean, I can talk with them about that. I don't know if they've had a serious conversation about price, but I'll whenever, if you can come check it out, I'll make sure I talk to them
Okay,
about that before you get there.
great. I'll see you there tomorrow at 11 o'clock.
Sounds good. So then
Okay.
you would do your research. We've talked about comping houses. So you would comp something. You would text your friend Ashton and say, "Hey, I've got a house I'm going to go see tomorrow. Can you look these numbers up for me
Yeah.
before I go?" And so then we show up, and typically this agent's out on the front porch,
Yep.
sometimes with hushed tones of like, "Hey, they're inside. Yeah, they're going through a few things and whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little bit of a mess. I just want to prepare you." And then the son opens up the door, is like, "Hey, y'all, come on in," and then there's chit chat, and so
Yeah. So,
so then
so
I've heard this conversation, like you're asking some of these basic questions as you're walking through the house, and kind of taking the pictures and all that. And so let's go back out to then we go out to the front porch again. This is a very normal thing for you. We go back out to the
mhm.
front porch. We're about to get in the car. The agent's like, so I'll go back. So hey, Tavis, what do you think? I don't know. I know you don't have all your numbers right now, but I mean, does this look like something that you could do, or do you have any idea about what it might cost to renovate this, or what you might be able to pay for it?
Yeah, so I walked through the home. I got my pictures for my numbers here, and I kind of had an idea before I came out of kind of the range I need to be in. But ultimately, um, the house needs a lot of work. There's a lot of deferred maintenance in here. Some other things to think about that a buyer's going to expect on the backside is, the fence is in pretty bad shape. The fence is going to
Mm-hmm.
be another $10,000 to $15,000. The house was built prior to 1985, so you know, based on the signs of some settlement and things like that throughout the house, there's definitely some concerns that we may have to replace the plumbing underneath the home. So, I can give you a number, uh, based on the plumbing being replaced. Um, but ultimately, the only way to really know is to do a static line test. So that may be something that we need to, um, put a contingency on unless they know that there is some major issues going on. There is some movement there on the back left side. So essentially, if we have to do foundation work, most likely it's going to result in having to replace the cast iron pipes. They just have an age limit, and this house is over 50 years old, and we
Yeah.
have these clay soils, so it's just part of it. About 2 out of 3 homes that I'm doing right now, I have to replace the cast iron.
Yeah.
In addition to that, obviously you've got all the other things. The windows haven't ever been updated. AC unit looks pretty old. The outside unit, the inside unit doesn't look much better.
I'm not liking where this is going, Tavis.
So there's a lot of things on it. I'd love to do the house, but there's just a lot of things that add up before it starts to look pretty. And typically this number is going to start at somewhere around $50 a foot. So this house being right at, almost 2,000 square feet, you're looking at approximately around $100,000 in renovations here.
Okay.
So what we
Yeah, I
have
know
to
that
do,
they got some quotes from some other people. I mean, I know that they know that it's in pretty rough shape, and they've gotten some quotes, and so I know that they're aware that it's going to take some money, and that they're just trying to get as much out of it as possible,
Sure.
but they're not really in a position to. None of them want to live here, So I'm going to do my best to try to
Sure.
get them to make a decision, but
Well, based on the supportive comps in the neighborhood, I don't know if you've looked at this yet or not, and but from what I can see, here's a couple properties that have sold over the last 90 days that are within a half a mile radius of this property, built in similar time frame, and you can see here, the renovated ones have sold, in the upper fours,
yeah.
somewhere between 475, 500, and there's one here for 525.
Yeah,
Um,
I saw that one. That was pretty good. I just thought maybe theirs would be a little different because it was, their lots pretty nice. I was
sure.
just hoping maybe it would be, but I get where you're coming from. Yeah, I've looked at those, and I mean, I kind of had an idea about. I just got to get them to be reasonable, and And Nancy said you're great to work with. I know you can close. I know, you do great work. I've looked up your stuff on Instagram, and I know that I know it's nice, and it takes money to do that. So, yeah, I mean, I knew it would be kind of a challenge, but I can talk with them and see where they are with their number and
Yeah.
how far
Well,
we can get with this.
well, let me tell you kind of how it works, and I'm happy to send this in writing as well. But essentially, if we're using the idea that this property would potentially be worth 495 to 500,000, we're going to start there. And then my cost of sale, because I'm a licensed agent, is essentially 5% cost of sale. Otherwise, it would be 8%. So what we're going to do is take that off the top. So 5% times 500, you're looking at 25,000 off the top. Now we're working with a number of 475. 475 minus $100,000 in renovations, as we just discussed, now is taking us down to about 375. So from 375, we're going to back out the profit margin that I'm looking to make, and essentially is going to put us somewhere in that 300 to 325 range. Is approximately where we're going to be in this offer. A lot of times people forget the profit part. So you might have somebody looking at this as
Yeah.
around a 375 number, but we're probably going to be in the low 300s. Is that
Well, I know
something
you
that
got to make money. I know, we all in this to make money. I don't expect you to work for free.
Absolutely. But essentially, if we can make something work in the low 300s, I think we can make a deal. We're looking at, 3 to 4 week closing time. Um, and I use bank money, so typically there's not really a contingency on approval. They might do an appraisal, but essentially that's just to figure out how the numbers work on my end as far as what the bank's going to want me to put down and that kind of thing. So it's
So
more
time
of
frame, we're looking at closing in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that.
yeah. And
Okay.
they're welcome to leave whatever in the home that they don't want to take. If they want to take everything, great. If they don't, they can leave leave behind what's here that they may not want to move out. So it doesn't have to
Okay.
be necessarily cleaned out. Makes things a little easier for them from a convenience factor. But yeah,
Yeah. Well,
that's
that'd be
essentially
good. I
what
mean,
we're
of
looking
course,
at.
I'd love to work with you, but I know they've called a couple other people who've, called them on the phone and left flyers and stuff. So I think they've got another guy coming by this afternoon, and they're
Yeah.
just trying to figure out what's best, and they've got to make a few decisions with, a couple of the siblings and all that. So, but I mean, it's, I think it's reasonable what you're saying. I understand, and I can explain it to them, and, and I can just let you know. I can let you know. So will you have a solid number for me, or will you, will you send me over an actual offer, or?
Yeah, I can. What I would say is talk to them, see if that's something that they're willing to accept, and if you guys want to wait and see what these other offers come in at as well, whatever you guys want to feel comfortable with, I'm happy to put together an offer in writing.
Sure.
Um, but this is essentially where we're going to be. So
Yeah.
somewhere between 300 and 325. So just let me
Okay.
know what works for you guys, and obviously your commission. If you don't have a listing agreement in place, happy to pay you a minimum of 3% referral. If that's something that makes sense, just let me know, and I can make sure that I'm building that into the deal as well.
Okay. Well, that sounds good. Well, thanks, Tavis, for coming out today. Tell Nancy
Absolutely.
hi next time you see her. I have heard that conversation 15 times with Tavis Westbrook. That's how it goes
Yeah.
every time we pull up in front of the house. But yeah, no, that's really good. And so I mean, what I like about it is obviously you know your stuff. You're always very calm. You don't pressure them. You're upfront about what you're going to make. A lot of people won't do that, and you work through the numbers. And the best thing from your negotiating standpoint, from a posture standpoint, is your numbers. And I've seen you walk away from a deal over $5,000, and you just know what's going to work and what you're not willing to go. And you don't feel hardly, in my opinion, from what I can tell, you feel very little emotional pressure to get a deal done, even if it's
Hmm.
you're doing a favor for somebody or they really need some, whatever. It just, yeah, this just doesn't work for me. And so you can just talk calmly. My problem with negotiating, and I know we're running a little bit long now, but my problem with negotiating through the years is that I don't have that confidence. And especially when you're on the buy sell side, I would love to have the posture of like, yeah, here's our offer, and I don't care if you walk away, it's fine, or I don't need this. I'm representing a buyer that really wants this house, or I'm representing a seller that really needs to sell. And so it's a different side of things. But anytime you seem desperate, I think I can't remember who they call it, desperation breath or something. It says you just have this vibe about you that you're willing to do more, or you're in desperation mode.
Yeah.
And there's that balance. And I used to yell, get real mad, and just super emotional, and take things really personally. And I've gotten way better about that, and it's just better for my health, and I think it's better for negotiating
There's
when you
a
don't have to get so tied up in it.
there's a great book out called Never Split the Difference.
Oh yeah,
And I'd like to go back and listen or read it again.
yeah. He was
Um,
an
it
FBI negotiator.
Yeah, I mean it's really good. I mean it's challenging because I mean to think and operate the way that he does or coaches in the book is challenging. Like
Yeah,
it's extremely challenging, especially for a personality like myself, who likes to chit chat and talk and and have a conversation and not ask so many open ended questions.
yeah.
I tend to teach when I have a conversation versus
Hmm.
ask the proper
Listening.
questions
Yeah,
to get a response. Um, and that's challenging. It's very challenging, but
yeah,
that's a great book to
yeah.
read to
Chris
understand.
Voss. Chris Voss, Never Split the
Yep.
Difference. He actually has a real estate specific book that I just was given as I won a quiz show or something at the
Nice.
last class I was at. So he's written a real estate book. So I need to read that. Um, Maybe called Full Price Agent or something like that. But yeah, Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. Great negotiating book, FBI
Yeah.
negotiator. So yeah, that's cool. I appreciate you going through that. So if you
I
are
think,
an agent out there and you want to work with Tavis, definitely hit us up. Hit Tavis
yeah.
up.
And real quick, I was just going to add to that. I think ultimately, if you understand what you're up against, or if you understand if you noticed in the beginning of our role play, I asked you guys questions. I asked questions on what do they expect? What are they looking to get out of this? Do they have a number in mind? All those things are good things to ask up front. And you kind of set the tone of what they're looking for. Like yesterday, I had an agent call me. She saw that I had this property going on in Montego. She has a buyer. She's, looking for the buyer. So I called her and I just said, what's the guy looking for? What's your client looking for? And she's like, well, he's really looking for like a 1-story. I'm like, well, we're not a 1-story. The master is down, but we're not a 1-story. And she's like, yeah, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, it doesn't matter. I'm like, well, we're a 3-bedroom, so, and immediately she kind of started going in with, a comp that we both know about. And she goes, yeah, and they're overpriced. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, yeah, they're a little dated. Um, and then she's like, well, this other one that I just saw, it sold really low, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know why, so I've actually been trying to call this agent that I know to ask why this renovated comp sold so low, because there's other comps that are high. And this is one based on everything we're doing over there and based on what the house is, and that it's a 3-bedroom and that the master's down. It's a really unique floor plan. I feel like I can push the value a little bit based on some of the recent comps. Also with the, over $100,000 renovation that we're doing to this, the other comparable properties aren't updated the way that ours will be.
Yeah.
So I was kind of feeling her out because it felt like, this is a low budget buyer, or they're looking for a deal. And so I was kind of filling out the equation. Ultimately, we kind of ended the conversation. I gave her a number of what I'm going to go to market for. She didn't really object to it. She just said, can I go walk it tomorrow? Of course, yes. But, keep in mind, it's not done yet,
Yeah.
And so it was interesting. It was interesting from that approach because I feel like we're getting a lot of that lately. Like people are kind of going into the market, trying to use some of these lower comps to try to drag your price down. And it's going to be challenging. You have to know, again, you have to know your product. You have to know what you have. I am back into a position that I remember being in when the market had lower price points, 2015 time, that I'm just having to prove up my product ahead of time.
Yeah.
And support documentation and comps and, and detail to just support it and hold to my guns on value.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a different time and a different phase of things, but really cool to get insight into your thinking on that. Hopefully people find that valuable. If you have not, please find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all the things. Subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple, Audible. I found out that you can also subscribe. So we would love to have you follow along. We're getting very close to 5,000 downloads. And if you could just send this to a friend or two or download a couple extra episodes, get us across that little line, it would feel awesome and would mean a lot to us. But for all of those that you have listened and you've reached out and you've given your 2 cents, we really, really thank you. And until next time, we hope you have a great day.